Majesty, Messiah, Majesty. Yeah. Every day, your praise will come from me, for your faithfulness was me. Messiah, Majesty. Every day, your praise will surely be a theme of joy for me, our Savior Almighty. Every day, your praise will come from me, for your faithfulness towards me. Messiah, Majesty. Every day, your praise will surely be a theme of joy for me. Messiah, Majesty. Yeah. For your giftings, I will praise you. For your lifting, I will worship you. For your giftings, I will praise you. For your lifting, I will worship you. And making me Messiah, Majesty. He is glorifying me, Messiah, Majesty. He's breaking and making me Messiah, Majesty. He is glorifying me. Lift your voice and say Messiah. Oh, yeah. Messiah, Majesty, Messiah, Majesty.
Okay, so we are looking at our subject on divination and the occult. Say it. Say divination and the occult. Please answer now. Divination and the occult.
Yes, sir.
Now, the reason why this is very, very important is because many Christians pray primarily, or in most Christian circles, a lot of Christians pray against divination. Many times we quote scriptures. There's no divination against Israel, no enchantment against Jacob. But when you hear Christians who say what they say concerning divination, and of course you must never forget the fact that a lot of sermons have been preached concerning divination. And many preachers have been able to reference different scriptures in terms of divination. But one of the things they have not been able to succinctly cover is who is responsible for divination and how it works.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And You need to understand that when it comes to divination, whoever is being divined for is actually in need of help. So, divination is also a means of assisting and helping the one, or what you call someone, in need. Divination also when we talk about being in need of help, it can come in form of worship. This area, worship, because here, this is the most powerful aspect of divination. Worship. This particular area is very, very powerful. And you may not really understand why we're telling you this. We will explain further. But when Christians target their prayers against divination, the picture they usually have in mind is the general picture that many see in movies of a voodoo priest throwing cowries and asking, trying to see something.
Yes, sir.
Actually, that's the first level of it. And sometimes we can watch some Christian movies where while someone is trying to do divination, a thunder strikes because somebody else is praying and all that. Now, in as much as those things can happen, but you need to understand the strength of divination, the potency of divination is within the parameters of worship. Which means, are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Which means, if all you do as a Christian is just to pray and not really worship the one you pray to, you can never defeat anyone engaged in divination in the aspect of worship. That person who is into divination within the ambits, that's one word you need to get familiar with in metaphysics, ambits. We in general civil conversation, we can say parameters or circle, but the word ambit is one word often used. Within the ambits, anyone engaged in divination within the ambits of worship, you can hardly defeat such a person when all you do is to pray to the God you don't worship. Because when it comes to divination in the aspect of worship, it is not only in songs. Really. It requires sacrifices. And there are physical efforts you put into it when it comes to divination within the ambit of worship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Than just the one who just prays in the name of Jesus. Now, if you study the life of Jesus and his prayer life and his walk with God, you realize, if you take time to study, most of Jesus' prayers were never revealed because he always went to pray when the people were asleep.
Yes.
So they'll say he went to pray.
Yes, sir.
There are only few prayers of Jesus that were captured word for word,
Yes.
which means there were prayers he prayed that those around him heard.
Yes, sir.
But many times he prayed privately.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It was his custom to do that.
Yes, sir.
Even coming to the Garden of Gethsemane, it was his custom to always pray.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want you to see something. Jesus never prayed against the diviner. You will never see where Jesus prayed against a diviner. And when Paul came to Ephesus, you will never see where he stood up. You know, we're teaching right now in church on how to pray.
Yes.
We will show you some things within that lesson on how to pray.
Yes.
Then you will know, for some of you, you've always misdirected your prayers.
Wow.
Now, when Paul came to Ephesus, Ephesus was heavily into divination.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
In the area of the worship of Diana, a goddess called Diana. Acts chapter 19, I guess. Yes. There was a goddess worshipped in Acts chapter 19 in Ephesus. It was what the people knew naturally. A goddess called Diana. Now, there were altars that were built in worship of her. Altars built in worship of this goddess called Diana.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, when Paul came to Ephesus, he came preaching the gospel. But the gospel that he preached delivered people from worshiping the goddess called Diana.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And the people who used to build the altars for the purpose of divination by the Ephesian folks
Yes, sir.
got angry.
Yes, sir. Yes.
The point here is that Paul had to even leave that city.
Yes, sir.
Even though he got converts, he had to leave. In fact, he escaped for his life with the help of his nephew,
Yes, sir.
because they would have killed him. But you need to understand that Paul, even though he got a lot of converts, did not originally prevail at first in starting a church. He had to leave first. And he took the people who were converted under his ministry, who were once worshippers of Diana,
Yes, sir.
to topple, to pull down the high places of Diana.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And they had to be citizens of that place. But Paul was a visitor, a foreigner, coming into Ephesus.
Yes, sir.
He did win the people to Christ, but he had to leave in a hurry He later came back. He later came back. But before he did, because even when he came back, he left again and put Timothy to be the pastor there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But that was even after the church had started. Now, there's a reason why we're making you see this. When you look at the nature of that church in Ephesus,
Yes, sir.
they were heavily into divination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They were heavily into the worship.
Yes, sir.
When we say divination, we mean the worship of Diana. Now, there's a reason why we're bringing this up, stirring it. There's a reason why we're taking it slow by or slowly. It is because when we say your prayers cannot necessarily defeat one in divination within the ambit of worship, is because when it comes to divination, the way the Prince of Darkness has designed it to be done is that it is done in such a way that it has become a cultural thing. I was going to say it looks cultural. That's why I said I paused. Then it has become a cultural thing, where it takes the people of a particular culture to engage in such a thing. When you look at certain African settings, the first missionaries who were sent were killed.
Yes, sir.
And they genuinely came in the name of the Lord. The reason why the Roman Catholics succeeded was because they had to adapt into the culture.
Yes, sir.
And embrace the culture and say that they came to make the culture better.
Yes, sir.
So they came with the intention that they were not a threat to the culture. But that was not the case with Paul in Ephesus. Paul's conversion of the people in their mass, in their droves, made the worship of Diana threatened.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And yet this man converting our people is not one of us.
Yes, sir.
And at the end of the day, Paul had to run away.
Yes, sir.
Mightily anointed Paul. So you see, this thing we're calling divination is not a game.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
it's not.
Because you might say you are praying against someone engaged in divination against you, and what you're actually trying to pray against is his culture.
Yes, sir.
And you can't win.
Jesus.
Yes, sir.
For instance, some of you here are Igbos,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Some of you are Igbos.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then imagine someone that is not Igbo, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Praying against Ikenga. Ikenga is one of the gods the Igbos worship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There is heavy divination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Practically every Igbo family is tied to Ikenga.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We will come to that.
Yes, sir.
Whether home and abroad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, it doesn't matter how you deceive yourself and say, we are clean, I'm serving God. Almost every Igbo family is tied to Ikenga.
Yes, sir.
And then there are some others we will mention too.
Yes, sir.
Now, you now find the same Igbo brother who is a Christian saying he's praying against Ikenga. It's like you praying against your culture.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And yet now the very same you is getting married, you now want to do traditional wedding.
Oh, my God.
Tell us why your wife will not be barren.
Jesus.
Yes, sir.
You understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tell us why your wife will not be barren. Or the Yoruba culture. No, Shango, no. I was going to remember. You made me skip. In Osun State,
Yes.
there's this worship some Yorubas do, where they go to the river, they wear white.
Yes.
In Oshogbo, no, not Orisha. I saw it all the time. People come from all over the world, white
Yes.
and all that. Eh?
Black Americans,
Shango.
No.
Black Americans talk about it.
They wear white, they wear
Yes.
beads.
Yes.
Osun is in Osun State, in Oshogbo, but there's this worship.
Black Americans talk about it a lot.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Are they like the Awufufu people?
They'll say Yemoji. No, Yemoji is for Ijebu Day. I know about Yemoji. No, come on. They come to the water. It's like the river goddess now.
Yes, sir.
No, Ogun is not. Okay. Just check you can Google it for me. The worship in Osun State. But here's the point.
Yes, sir.
Now, like people of Oshogbo now, not every Yoruba people are into, because Yoruba has a lot of gods.
Yes, sir.
There are some who are into Shango. There are others like that. But these particular people in Osun State who are really into that thing.
Yes, sir.
In fact, to people from Osun State, that's their culture.
Yes.
If you are from Ilesha, Oshogbo, all those places, there's a Yoruba name for it. The worship of the goddess of the river. In Oshogbo, if you check it, you will see it there. Come on, if you Google it, it's there now. It's public knowledge.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes, sir.
is it Orisha or something? But don't worry about that. What I'm trying to say is that now somebody from such a background is now a Christian.
Yes.
But now he's not trying to pray against the collapse of the worship of the river goddess that the culture of that people are into.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can't prevail.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If it is a matter of an individual from that place coming to attack you, that's a different matter.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But to say you want to pull down that thing, you can't. Because pulling down that thing is like pulling the people down.
Yes, sir.
And the people are the people you were supposed to save.
Yes.
You'll get what we're trying to say. How many of you agree that the worship of Mary,
Yes.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
the worship of the statue of Mary and Jesus,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
is a Roman Catholic thing?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
But it is not scriptural.
Yes, sir. That's true.
But why do they still do it? It is something from an aspect of the Vedic metaphysics. And the Roman Catholics permitted it to be done. And today is one of the things that makes the Roman Catholics what they are. You see images in all their churches. All their churches. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you may say that thing is barbaric, it is terrible, God does not hear them. Who told you it was God they told you they were praying to? Did they tell you they are praying to God?
No.
They didn't. What I'm trying to show you here is, remember we had told you something about Agravigra
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and bringing images back to life
Yes,
and all that. They do that a lot, even with the images you see of Mary and Jesus. It's I'm looking for how to put it in a simple form. There are several images that are being worshipped, and it is dependent on the. It depends on societies.
Yes, sir.
When we say societies, now you can understand what we mean. That it is connected to culture.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes,
So, and culture is man-made. It's initiated by a group of people, but it has lasted. It has created a way of life for a group of people for ages.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that is why, to this day, no matter how powerful a sermon is, and how powerful a man of God is, no man of God has been able to pull down a culture. And that would begin to tell you the power of divination within the ambits of worship. When we say worship now, we mean something that has now become a culture.
Yes, sir.
Not just somebody saying, Baba, do something for me. Sometimes you can hear you can watch a home video, for instance, an African movie, where somebody can say, go, the community is behind you.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
You see that remark?
Sir.
yes.
The community is behind you. It's no joke.
Yes, sir.
Jesus.
Or I came to see the chief or the king of this village. I came to receive your blessings.
Jesus.
Okay, the Roman Catholics, for instance, like we said, they say they pray to God through the images of Jesus
Yes.
and Mary. But they are actually following an ancient path, the path of the ancient Vedas. They are following the worship of Mary and Jesus through images is the path of the ancient Vedas or Vedas, Vedas, which the church and the pontiff or the pontificate has approved. And down through the years, they can't stop it. In fact, that particular aspect of that particular part of the ancient Vedas is also the same part the masters of Hindu use in the worship of the image of Saraswati. Saraswati, S-A-R-A-W-A, S-A-R-A-S-W-A-T-I. S-A-R-A-S-W-A-T-I. So the Hindus use the image of Saraswati for divination. Now, the Hindus, is it one person?
No.
Or a culture?
Culture.
A people?
Yes, sir.
That will tell you something about divination. When it becomes cultural, it becomes more powerful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And when this becomes something more powerful, at that point, what you are looking at is something beyond an individual.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you might defeat custodians of such culture, such forms of divination.
Yes, sir.
But the people, you can't. You can't. Because it is a part of them. They were born into it.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So you see, even the spirits now, the forces of darkness that such people worship, will fight you tooth and nail to see that you don't take someone that belongs to them from their hands. And that's why those who do evangelism, before you go out for evangelism, you must really pray that God favors you.
Yes.
You must really pray.
Yes.
You see, this thing we call first generation, second generation, and all that. The mistake those in the second generation make is that they think they are not part of where their parents are coming from because they have a different accent.
Yes.
Actually, those who belong to the second and the third generation of immigrants from distant lands, and those parents came from a form of culture.
Yes, sir.
Those generation, the second, the third generation, are the ones under the most attack.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then the same person now says he's going back to his hometown to go and preach. Meanwhile, God did not send the person. First of all, did you ever take time to sit down to look at why your parents left where they were coming from? Oh, because things were bad. Do you know why things were bad back home for your parents to run away? There is a spirit that crippled the economy that made your father run away. What if your father running away was to go and propagate the power of the spirit that crippled the economy back home? You don't know? Spirits fight to increase their territory.
Yes. Yes.
And so they can paralyze your power back home. And your father's and mother's influence.
Yes, sir.
Things were difficult. So they made you run away. And it's amazing why you were running away, your way opened to go overseas.
Jesus.
And it's not as if you were serving God by the power of the Holy Spirit. No, you were just a nominal person. Things did not work back home, but your way opened to go overseas.
Yes, sir.
You thought it was a joke. You thought it was just nothing. So I'm going overseas to go and school. I'm going overseas to go and do this. No, you were taking them with you. You were actually extending their coverage. Why? Because through you, it will be an opportunity for them to reach out to any person from that culture within the place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was one of the things the Lord told me when I first came to America. Separate yourself from Nigerians, number one. Then secondly, don't connect with any Edo person.
Yes, sir.
I've met Edo people. They've invited me for their meetings, join their association. I'm not part of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm not talking about only Africa, even if you come from Jamaica, even if you come from Guyana, everywhere.
Yes, sir.
So, your father and your mother, whether they know it or not, brought that culture. They are a product of a divination. They brought the power where they came, so that that spirit can capture others that are from that culture, where no one can escape. So a man may think he escaped many years ago.
Yes.
He has now become Americanized with his children
Yes.
and all that. But the spirit that is being worshipped back home used you. So those parents became missionaries for those spirits
Jesus.
to go and capture the others back. That's why you find some people, if the Lord opens your eyes to see, they never left home,
Yes.
even though they are in America.
Yes, sir.
Honestly.
Yes, sir.
After 10 years, it was just this year when I was on the vacation that the Lord spoke to me. He said all this while, and the only person I shared this with was with Pastor Favor actually. When we were just talking, I said, you know, the Lord told me something that I was baffled about. And she said, what is this? I said, I was baffled when an angel spoke to me when I was away. I said, now you just entered America. Wow. I said, I don't get it. I've been in America since. He said, no, you were by the gate.
Wow.
I said, all these 10 years? He said, yes, you were by the gate. Whatever success you thought you had was just by the gate. Now you have entered.
Wow.
So this thing is no joke. This thing is no joke. I was thinking, and what prompted the conversation that I was telling Pastor Favor was because I noticed the very same thing that happened when I first came to America 10 years ago was the exact same thing that happened during my vacation. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. But exactly the same thing. The only difference was that Pastor Eunice came to pick me at the airport. But the first time I came to America, I stayed at JFK for 2 days. But everything was exactly the same thing. Then the Lord said, now you finally entered America. But 10 years back, you were by the gate. So, where did they give birth to you?
That's what I'm thinking.
You that claim you are the second generation. Or third generation. So when we are looking at divination here, we are not just playing here. Isn't it amazing? God will talk to Moses about his plan for the children of Israel. Yet the children of Israel did not know there was a spirit planning for them. A spirit providing for them. But sending them to the promised land. Was it not God who took them to the promised land? Yeah, now God was saying, you don't know the spirit that was sending your father overseas? Whose spirit did your father represent? Was your father a man of God before he came to America? And if your father was a man of God when he came to America, where is his success since he has been in America? Somebody I just came to school. You're still speaking plenty English. Okay, so the Hindus use the image of Saraswati for divination. Saraswati is worshipped as the goddess of knowledge. This is the goddess of knowledge by the Hindus. Goddess. Okay, let's give you a practical example. How many of you have noticed practically almost 80, or let's just say 70, or let's be conservative, 65% or extra conservative, 60% of all the restaurants you have in America, they all have one Hindu image.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir.
One Buddhist image.
Yes, sir.
Buddhist for the nail salon.
And the person who owns it is not from that place. But you'll be amazed that that person somehow has interest in this thing. Yet he's very white. But when you trace it, you discover the person is a progeny from that place. The person's father and mother are pure white. But you get to see, if you trace it backwards, the person's history, you get to see the person has one connection somehow, some way. Not through that image, but towards where that image is worshipped. And you get to see the person is a biological product from that culture. It's not a mistake. The person may just say, I just saw it and I bought it. It's not like that. It's not like that. Why is it that politicians don't agree? Because a lot of them are serving different gods. A lot of them are products of different worship. I think worship should be the best word. You are a product of a particular kind of worship.
Yes, sir, for sure.
Some say, but we're all serving God. That's what. So you see, worship is more than just singing.
Yes, sir.
That's what we're saying.
Yes.
It's a divination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Saraswati is what? Worshipped as what? The goddess of knowledge and consort of Lord Brahma. She's a consort to Lord Brahma. Brahma. Lord Brahma. Ma. Lord Brahma happens to be the god of fire. So, now, there are other images too that are being worshipped. The images of Govinda. Govind. The images of Govinda. And the images of Narayana. Narayana. And then the images of Hanuman. And of course the image of Buddha. These images are worshipped in diverse places. Now, there's a reason why we're using the word worship. Now, do you know what we mean by worship here? It's a form of divination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when you see some people, they bow towards an image. You may say, why are they worshiping this image? It's a divination.
Yes, sir.
That's the highest level of the potency of divination. Worship. And this time around, it has now become what? A cultural thing. It's a force. To prevail over it, you can't. It's a people's thing. Rather, you can only prevail over individuals,
Yes.
but not the thing that is worshipped. Even God will not back you on that one. That's why no man of God has been able to pull down a high place where people worship. Come on. Even with all the people Elijah killed, did they stop worshiping Baal?
No.
They continued. Elijah prevailed over individuals, but he didn't prevail over the culture that his own people were into. And this culture was something they borrowed. Okay, let's tell you one of the biggest mistakes America is making. Would you like to know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you sure you really want to
Yes,
know?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please tell me, sir.
You'll be surprised if I tell you. Should we tell you the biggest mistake?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The biggest mistake America made. I don't think you want to know. Should I clean this? Hanuman. 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 Govinda. 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 I'm spelling it because there are some people who may want to see the spelling. Narayana. Narayana. Okay. Saraswati. 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 Okay. What? Which one? Okay. Lord Brahma. Brahma. Buddha. Buddah. Okay. Now, which one? I've already, this one here, I've already mentioned it now. Hanuman. The biggest mistake America has made, and they keep making. Would you like to know?
Yes, sir.
I don't think you want to know. All right, if we tell you that, then we'll close with that. The biggest mistake America ever made is her alliance with Israel. In the coming days, we'll show you something. You'll get to see everything that happened to America since World Trade Center. Since World Trade Center is everything that the Lord prophesied against Israel. But because America aligned herself with Israel, everything that is falling on Israel is falling on America. World Trade Center, the fall of World Trade Center was not a mistake. Prophecies Isaiah prophesied against Israel. Prophecy Jeremiah prophesied against Israel. Prophecy Ezekiel prophesied against Israel. They are all happening in America now, but they are not happening in Israel anymore. Wow. Why? America is a new Israel.
Jesus.
Because America has given so much to Israel financially, to the extent that America has carried the pains of Israel, the burden of Israel. This was the biggest mistake. But in the churches, on TV, on Christian television, they tell you this is the best alliance. Sow seeds and be in partnership with Israel. But Israel, is Israel right now relaxed? Is Israel right now in line with God? No. Israel is still an enemy to God. This is the time for the Gentiles. This is the time where we're not supposed to align with Israel. Because Paul said it in Romans chapter 11. This is the calendar for the Gentiles. It is after this calendar ends with the rapture that the calendar of Israel will begin again. Israel right now is in darkness, according to scriptures. But preachers have been telling us, align with Israel. But Israel is in darkness. They've been cut off. Read Romans chapter 11. Go to the Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11. I think Romans chapter 11. I hope I'm correct with that chapter. I've not read it in a while, but I think that will bless you. Yeah. Okay, look at verses 16. Okay, in fact, let us start from verses 11. Can somebody just read for us from verses 11 down to verses 25? It's a long reading, but can somebody just read that to us? Go ahead, go ahead.
Amen.
Oh, yeah. I'm super.
To appreciate our most holy esteemed Father, Daddy Joshua Aguilar, and our most holy esteemed majestic Bro.Osi King. Thank you for this privilege. We're reading from Romans chapter 11, verses 11 through 25. And it says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through the fall salvation is come unto the Gentiles.
You see that? Through the fall of Israel. That's what he's talking about. If you read the preceding verses. But because of time. The fall of Israel has brought what? Salvation to the Gentiles. Which means Israel is still falling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And what America is doing is to align with the falling. And that's why America is falling. That's the reason for the passing of the homosexual bill. But the preachers who preach against homosexual, against America, are the ones saying align with Israel. But these laws, the laws of the Lord, was against Israel for patronizing homosexuality. There was a law against sodomy. There was a law against homosexuality, bestiality. It was Moses who brought those laws to the Jews. So in case you don't know, you are living the Old Testament in America. You are living it anew. But go ahead. Let's be fast, please.
Yes, sir. For to provoke them to jealousy.
You see that?
12. Now if they fall
God
again-
favored the Gentiles to provoke Israel to jealousy in their fall.
Yes, sir.
America now fell into the jealousy by alliance. Okay, read on now.
Verses 12. Now if they fall, of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? Verses 13. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. Verses 14. If by any means I provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. Verses 15. For if they casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall be the receiving of them but life from death?
Now, did you see that? The casting away of Israel is the reconciliation of the Gentile world. This is our time with God.
Yes, sir.
But America is aligned with Israel that has been cast away. Okay, read on. Let's be fast.
Verses 16. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the roots be holy, so are the branches.
You see what he's saying there? He's telling you Israel is the first fruit. If Israel is holy, then we, the lump, we are holy. Right? And if we are holy, everything we do should be holy.
Yes,
But we're trying to align with Israel to be holy.
Yes, it's true.
And Israel has been cast away
Yes, sir.
for now. Okay, read on now.
Verses 17. And if some of the branches are broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them, and with thy partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree.
What he's saying is that we as Gentiles, we were the wild olive branch. You know, in science, you have grafting, where you can take a mango branch and graft it into an orange tree.
Yes, sir.
That's what he's trying to say. We are the wild olive. Israel is the olive. We are the wild olive. So read something about the wild olive now. Read again that verse.
Verses 17. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them, and wilt the partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree.
You see that we are partakers, because the same life that services the tree to other branches services this one. So he's talking about the same life of God. Whatever Israel once benefited is what we should be benefiting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the Jews now are taking the wealth of the Gentiles because America aligned with them. But go ahead now.
Verses 18. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root of thee. Verses 19. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in.
You see that? God is saying, I created an opportunity to bring you into fellowship. Fine. Yes, go ahead.
20. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off.
You see that? Israel, that is, he said, unbelief made God cut them off. Remember, Jesus said, any tree that does not bear fruit, my Father will cut off. That's what happened to Israel. The same unproductive Israel is who America is aligning with. Now, we may say we are coming under the grounds of economic and political means. But if you study, the same preachers prophesying against America are the ones telling American Christians, to support Israel. And when you look at the patterns of every tragedy, national tragedy that has ever happened in America, it is exactly what the prophets prophesied against Israel. But Israel doesn't seem to be suffering it now. It is America that is suffering it. Why is America suffering it? Because America is a Gentile nation alive to God. Israel has been cast out for now. And so the penalty that would have fallen on Israel is leaping over Israel into America, because this is the time of the Gentiles. This is the calendar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Read on, read on.
Verses 20. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off. And thou standest by faith, but not high-minded, but fear.
Yes. He said this thing should make us terrified. We should see what God did to Israel and become humble. Not to align with them, but to become humble. Now, I'm not anti-Semitic. You understand?
Yes, sir, yes.
I'm just trying to show you what the Bible says.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
You know, things like that, people can react and say, I'm becoming anti-Semitic. But the Bible said this is the time for the Gentiles.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't mean if you see an Israeli who is suffering or being attacked, you can't support. We're not saying attack each other. We're just saying, before God, this is the calendar of the Gentiles.
Yes, sir.
That's not anti-Semitic. I'm not attacking any Jew.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Verses 21. For if God spared not the natural branches,
You see
take
that?
heed lest he also spare
That's
not.
what he's saying. If God can discipline the children of Israel, who are of the natural branches to the tree, right?
Yes, sir.
Then how can God spare us if we misbehave? Because right now we are becoming like what the Jews were before they fell. Okay, read on now.
Verses 22. Behold, therefore, the goodness of severity of God on them which fell, severity, but towards thee, goodness.
You see that? Goodness. But Israel is still under punishment spiritually. We are enjoying the goodness, and we're taking the goodness to those under punishment, under God. Okay. Read.
If thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shalt be cut off.
You see that? If you continue that way, like the Jews, you will be cut off. Okay, read now.
Verses 23. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in.
You see that? If they change from their unbelief, then they will be brought back. But they are yet to do that. Okay, read now.
For God is able to graft them in again.
Yes.
Verses 24. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature in a good olive tree, how much more shall be? Which be the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree.
Yes.
Verses 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of these mysteries, lest ye should be wise in your own conceit. That blindness in parts is happened to Israel.
You see that? Israel is blind. There's a blindness. That's why they've not accepted the message. Okay, read on.
Until the fullness of the Gentiles to become.
You see that? So, until the fullness of the Gentile. And the fullness of the Gentile is when the rapture takes. That's where anything with those of us who are non-Jews ends. So, when you hear those who are left behind, you know this thing, left behind.
Yes.
Some Christians, they will go through the tribulation and then be restored. There's no such thing. If you miss it now, you have missed everything. There is no left behind. There will be people who miss it, and it has to do with their choices. And there was something Paul had to say about that. Someday we'll look at that. But notice what he says. This is the calendar of the Gentiles.
Yes, sir.
Instead of us to use it to reach out to more of the Gentiles who have not heard, we're trying to use that finances to say we are supporting Israel. So the church is collecting money from people and going to give those who are God's enemies for now. Now, when you look at what is happening to Ukraine, it was exactly the same thing that happened to Israel in the days of the Babylonian kings. And who is their president? A Jewish Ukrainian. But an America now is taking all our money to support, while America is having financial difficulties. It's all because of it. But Israel is just there in between, just looking. America is carrying the financial burden towards Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are running as refugees like the way Israel ran away. You understand? So, again, please, I'm not political. I'm just trying to show you something from the spiritual side. Do you understand? So, it matters who you partner with. So, here, you need to understand, America and her citizens unconsciously is under the Jewish Orthodox law right now. The very law Jesus died to abolish. That's why what is preached the most in the churches is Jesus dying for us. Jesus dying for us. And the thing seems to work because we have already carried the Jewish culture by partnership. But World Trade Center, exactly, because Isaiah said, an eagle will fly in the air and come and destroy the towers in Israel. But the eagle was an airplane, 2 planes that struck the World Trade Center. And the plane actually had, 2 planes, if you check, even if you go on the internet, the 2 planes had the image of an eagle descending at the tail. So, and even some of the remarks some of the politicians made before World Trade Center, few days before World Trade Center, the remarks, the word for word they made, verbatim, unknown to them, was exactly what Isaiah prophesied. Some of them will say, word for word, verbatim. And the time, for some it was 2:15 p.m., exactly the time, the verses aligned. Exactly the time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So why are all these things? Because whoever you partner with, you become that one. 2 have become 1.
Yes, sir.
This is what is affecting America, the partnership with Israel. And that is why God has not defeated Palestine and other nations that are attacking Israel. Because Israel is not in God's favor right now. But preachers preach Israel is the favored world.
Yes.
If Israel was the favored world, there would be no wailing wall for them to go and pray.
Yes.
The wall is called Wailing Wall.
Right, sir.
But Christians go there to pray.
Yes, sir.
From America and of course from around the world. But I hope you were blessed today. So in our next class, we'll start looking at an aspect of divination with worship, and then we'll show you some things. And it's something you should pay attention to, so that you can be conscious of how you pray against divination.
Yes, sir.
Because if you don't understand the mechanics, you may think that you achieved something.
Lord have mercy.
Balaam said you can't divine against these people. He wasn't talking about one person, the whole nation.
Yes, sir.
Because God is their culture.
My God.
As at the time Balaam was prophesying to Balak.
Oh, yeah. Messiah, Majesty, Messiah, Majesty. Yeah. Every day, your praise will come from me, for your faithfulness was me.